So we're still doing this "you're not as unique, smart, experienced" thing. And this week I'm going to be talking about "you're not as experienced as you think you are." That's my topic. That's what I'm talking about. We're talking about experience. So I wanted to start out by talking about what experience really is. So I'm going to throw a lot of words out there, like experience, wisdom, discernment, insight, stuff like that, because experience involves a lot more than we think it does, I think. So the definition of experience, I looked it up on dictionary.com, and I don't have a slide, so you gotta listen. Knowledge or practical wisdom that's gained from what someone's observed, encountered, or undergone. So that's the technical definition of experience. There's a lot to really unpack there that we want to look at. I think one of the most important words that defines experience is a word called wisdom. There's a lot to be said for wisdom. There's a big difference between being book smart and learning something and being wise and having wisdom. And wisdom is knowledge of what's true or right, coupled with judgment. That's the important part to remember. It's knowing what's true or right, coupled with judgment as to action, discernment, or insight, or enlightenment. And discernment is a word that I think we probably hear used a lot in the church. I don't know if you guys have heard that term before. Discernment, discerning something. And that's just a kind of fancy way of saying, that means to perceive by sight or some other sense, or to recognize what's true. And then the last word that we have in this definition of experience is insight. Not insight like our retreat, which is like insight, like incite a riot, insight. This is insight, S-I-G-H-T, self-knowledge, intuition, understanding, or an ability to see or recognize an inner truth. So I think by these definitions we can see that experience involves a lot of things, but most of the things really come from real life interaction, stuff that happens in real life, stuff we do. So experience happens when we go through life. That's how we learn. One could argue that even when you go to school, you're experiencing that learning environment. The teacher is giving you their knowledge, giving you your wisdom. You're experiencing that and you're learning it somehow. But real life experience involves when something happens to us and we learn from it. And that's why being willing to listen to someone who's been there before or done that before, I think is so important. They've got experiences that we don't have. There's a lot of people on the face of the planet that have experiences that I don't. So if I've got an important decision to make, it makes sense to reach out to those people who may have experienced it before and know more, because they can help me. And that's really what we're talking about tonight. So we're going to be looking at a really cool video clip. We're going to be doing a little exercise that'll kind of show us how sometimes we only have part of the picture, and talking about our worldly experiences, or basically your worldly experiences at this age versus, say, my worldly experiences at my age, my in-laws' worldly experience in their 70s, and how that looks different and how that changes. But as soon as I decided to do this message on experience, I knew a movie clip immediately came to mind. It comes from one of my absolute all-time favorite ever movies on the face of the planet. Has anyone ever seen The Matrix? Yeah, that is like one of the best movies ever, right? That movie is all about experience. It's all about Neo thinking that he knows something that isn't actually true. So we're going to set up the rest of the message with a clip here that, if you've seen this movie before, I'm sure you're all going to recognize. It's kind of long, so settle in, get some popcorn.
That's always so cool.
That is like the best movie ever. So, and if you've ever seen that movie, you know that it's filled with moments like that, where Morpheus has got this knowledge, this information, because he's lived this life, and he's constantly taking Neo to the door and encouraging him to go through. So Morpheus is passing on this life experience to Neo. Neo is learning from that, and then he's building his own life experiences on it. It's one of the coolest movies ever. And you notice that there's a lot of fear. Like, if you watch that scene, you can see the fear in Neo's face. I know there's one point in time when he even asks Trinity, because again, if you've seen the movie, there's a little bit of history there. So he even asked Trinity at one point, you did all of this? And that's kind of his way of reassuring himself because he trusts her. And oftentimes when we have big decisions to make in our life, that's kind of the way it goes. We go to people we trust and they share their experiences with us, and sometimes it can be frightening because sometimes the truth is frightening, but there's people who've been there before, who've seen it before, who have done it before, and that's what this movie is really all about, and that's why I love it so much. There's a lot of security knowing that someone has personally experienced something that you're currently going through, and that can be a huge comfort. I mean, has anyone ever been in a situation where, I don't know, say you get in a huge fight with a friend at school, there's a breakup with a boyfriend or a girlfriend, or maybe it's something bigger, your parents are going through a divorce. You know, and you tend to want to seek out people who've been through something like that before. You know, why do you do that? Because they understand. They know what it's like. They've been there. They can talk to you about it and maybe tell you a little bit about what to expect. And that's kind of what goes on in this movie. So what we're going to do now, because again, the whole idea of this message is that you're not as experienced as you think you are, and I would go so far as to say I'm not as experienced as I think I am. Most of us in this room are not as experienced as we think we are. Oftentimes we think we know something, we act on that, and we don't have all the pieces to the puzzle, and we don't have the big picture, and we end up making mistakes. So we're going to do this exercise, and at your tables I want you to try and see if you can figure it out. There's a couple of pictures I'm going to put on the screen, and what I want you to do in your little group is I'm going to put a picture on the screen. I'm going to give you about, I don't know, 60 seconds to try and figure out what you're looking at. And then I'll show you what you're really looking at. So let's start with the first slide here. Again, just talk in your groups. This is a picture. So anyone have any idea what that is that you're looking at there? Yes. Don't. All right. Who thinks they know what you're looking at in that picture?
Sloth. I do that.
I'll give you a hint. Some of you know her. It's my pup. That's Birdie. That's my dog. But see, you don't have the whole picture. You've got this very, very small piece of the picture. So, you know, there you go. All right. I got another one for you. What do you think that is? Yeah, that one was a little easier. That's one of those, that's a light bulb. It's one of those energy saver light bulbs because we're very green in our house, so we use those. All right, next one. You saw it, stop saying. You think it's a what? It's chairs. You think it's chairs? Anyone else have any idea what this is? You saw it. Yeah. This is my cable remote. There we go. See, that's my cable remote. See, I was just like super lazy. I was like laying in my bed on Saturday, literally just taking pictures of things that happened to be right in my room. So I'll give you a hint. What's this last? And then I got one more. That's okay. So some of them were probably pretty difficult to figure out at first because you only had this tiny, tiny piece of the picture. But I'm guessing that if I were to show you these exact same pictures like 6 months from now, you'd be like, oh yeah, I remember what that was. I remember seeing that before, and it would be easier for you to figure out. Or if you've been one of these people that does these puzzles, you know, you would have an easier time figuring it out. So that's kind of where we're going with this idea of having an experience before and only having a small piece of the puzzle and then knowing the larger piece of the puzzle. What we're going to do now to kind of build on this concept is you're going to go into your team time, and your group leaders have a list of things, you know, a list of experiences that some of you may have had in your life and some of you may not have. And so you're going to talk a little bit about whether or not you've experienced those things, like maybe had a job, had a girlfriend or a boyfriend, you know, been a part of a team. You're going to talk about that and talk a little bit about whether you've had those experiences and what they were like. All right, so break up into your team. And this will be about a 10-minute discussion. Okay, so in your teams when you were talking, were there people in your team who'd had some of these experiences on the list? Yeah. Yeah. Were there some people on your team who had all of the experiences on your list? No one? Right. If you were in your group, you might have noticed that the list tended to get more involved as it went on. So those first couple of things, like had a boyfriend or a girlfriend, felt like you were in love, maybe there were some of you that experienced it, but it wasn't until really your adult leaders could talk about what it was like to be married, what it was like to have to take someone else into consideration every time you made a decision. I'm sure there are lots of you in this room who have a job, but it was probably the adults who were like worked 40 hours a week, had to budget a paycheck. So, there are people amongst you, there are friends in your life that have had some experiences that maybe you haven't. There are people in this room who've had life experiences that you haven't. There are adults in this room who've had life experiences that you haven't. Parents, mentors, teachers, pastors, older siblings, friends. They can all be a great source of wisdom when you're making important decisions, because some of them have gone through things that you have not. They know things you don't, primarily because they've done them and you've not. What I want to talk about now is there are a couple of tools that we use when we make decisions. Can anyone think of a tool you use when you make a decision? Your brain. Yeah, knowledge, right? Knowledge is information you already have in your head. You know how things have gone in the past, and that can help you decide what to do in the present, okay? And you may have gotten this knowledge from school, you may have, from books, you may have gotten it from friends, but knowledge is, basically how we make decisions. We think about a situation and we go, okay, well, last time this happened, I did this, that didn't work, so I'm going to try this time, okay? What's another way that we make decisions? Well, research, right. Research is a good way. If you're trying to make a decision, you're not sure really what to do, a lot of people will research. I know I do that all the time. I Google stuff, if I want to figure something out. And sometimes what's on there might be true, sometimes it might not be true, but at least I get a good starting point, when I do some research. How about impulse? Anyone ever that's a sudden and somewhat involuntary course of action, okay? In other words, a reaction without much thought. Anyone ever make decisions based on impulse? Yes. Right, we've all done it. How does that usually turn out? Sometimes we're lucky and it turns out okay, but most of the time if we're just making a decision on impulse and we're reacting and we're not thinking first, those results don't usually end well. But again, can you learn from that? Yeah. Can you learn from a friend's experience with that? Can a friend tell you, I was in this situation and I don't know what I was thinking. I wasn't thinking at all and this is what I did and this is how it went. Yeah. And then one of the best ways to make a decision, as we've talked about here, is getting advice from someone else who we believe knows more than we do based on their life experiences. And the Bible's got a couple of verses on that. This is the first one that I have here. That's just a blank page. That's just another blank page. That's that.
You went back or is it a remote?
You went the wrong way.
Is it a remote?
It's a remote. That's the answer. Oh, I think we went back. Now we're going for, okay, hold on. Team time, done. See, I have no experience using the clicker. I'm not good at this. Okay. All right, so this Bible verse is one in Proverbs. And I love the book of Proverbs because it's like an instruction book for life. Like you go in there and there's all these little great sayings that you need to remember that help you to, not do dumb stuff. So anyways, this one says folly, which is foolishness. I love that word. I like to use it instead of foolishness or silliness. It's a good word. Folly delights a man who lacks judgment, but a man of understanding keeps a straight course. Plans fail for lack of counsel, but with many advisors, they succeed. So what is that verse really telling us? When we're making plans, when we're making decisions, when we're deciding on courses of action, seek counsel. And it doesn't just say one, it says many advisors. There's lots of people in your life that you want to talk to. Sometimes if it's a really big decision, you might want to talk to a couple of people. You might talk to, like say it's, deciding where to go to college. Maybe you want to talk to a couple of your friends who are already in college. What did they do when it was time for them to decide? Maybe you want to talk to your parents about, how did you finance this? How am I going to pay for this? What stuff is involved? Maybe you want to talk to some of your teachers at school and your advisor at school. Maybe you want to talk to a mentor. A lot of times it's best to get a lot of different opinions Because then you've got a lot more knowledge to base your decisions on. And there's a lot of people who may give you a piece of the information that you need, you know. Someone might give you that financial piece of the puzzle. This is the best way to go about getting financial aid. You know, this is the best way to go about the admissions process. Your guidance counselor might be like, these are the grades you need. These are the extracurriculars you need, you know. You might go to your parents who say, these are things you shouldn't do in college, because I did them and that was bad. Don't ever do these things in college. You know, that might happen too. So some things in life we've got to experience on our own as well in order to learn from them. And I've seen this, you know. And I was this person when I was your age. I had to learn everything on my own. I didn't ever think anyone knew anything. You know, that was my big problem when I was your age. And what I found as I got older is that a lot of negative and poor decisions can be avoided by relying on the advice of people who've been there before and know the outcome. My kids at home have heard me tell them a number of times, I'm not trying to be a hypocrite. I'm trying to tell you that I've been down that road before. I know where that road leads, and you don't want to end up there. A lot of times, people in your life who've had bad experiences and are willing to share those experiences with you can save you a lot of heartache. And I believe me, I look back on my life and wish, you know, that I had listened more. Here's another verse. Maybe.
Chris, on the next slide.
Somebody, there's one more Bible verse on there. Next slide. Arrow.
Would be nice if
Right
it,
arrow.
Right arrow.
yeah, that's what I'm hitting.
There's not, I thought there was another one on there.
There it is. It must have hung up.
Okay, keep doing the Jeopardy music. There's another slide in there that talks about this. There it is. There it is. My son, keep your father's commands and do not forsake your mother's teachings. And this just kind of talks about older people in your life, people wiser and more experienced. Bind them on your heart forever. Fasten them around your neck. When you walk, they will guide you. When you sleep, they will watch over you. When you awake, they will speak to you. For these commands are a lamp. This teaching is a light, and the corrections of discipline are the way to life. And basically, I sum that all up with this. A really wise person listens to people who've been there before. It can save you a lot of heartache, and believe me when I tell you that I personally suffered a ton of unnecessary heartache because I had too much pride to listen to anyone else when I was younger. So that's what I'm hoping you take away from this lesson. We all like to think at this age or at any age that we know it all. You know, I've experienced it. Oh, you know what? You don't know what it's like to be a teenager nowadays. You know, you're 45 years old. You have no idea what it was like to be 15. Like Gwen talked about last week, there are a couple of things that remain universal. You know, pain is pain. You know, hurt is hurt. Heartache is heartache. You know, love is love. Betrayal is betrayal. These emotions don't change. And even though society is different today, in general, a certain action is going to result in a certain consequence, right? You know, if I drink before the age of 21 and go to a party, the police come, I'm probably going to go to jail. That was the consequence when I was a kid. That's the consequence now. If I don't study and take my grades and my education seriously when I want to go to college, I'm not going to be able to get into the school I want. Some of these things are universal. They do not change. So remember that these adults in this room and the parents and other adults in your life, no, we might not have had Facebook. We might not have had cell phones, or if we did, they were like those big bricks that were really big to carry around. But a lot of the things you're going through, a lot of the things that you are experiencing and will experience are universal. So there are people who have experienced it before and can share those outcomes with you, good or bad, and tell you what you might learn from them, and perhaps they can save you some heartache in the future by giving you some good advice from their own life experiences. So seek those people out. That's why God puts these people in your lives, so that they can share this wisdom with you and you can learn from it. And in turn, I believe we all have a story that God puts on our hearts that we're supposed to share with other people. Our job also is to be a source of wisdom and experience for people who might need it. Be open to people younger than you who want to talk to you. This ministry is made up of students 6th grade through 12th grade. There's a lot of junior high students, older students. Be open to talking about your experiences with younger students and help them learn as well. You know, you're never too young or too old to have important life experiences that people can learn from. So I'm going to call the band back up if we're ready to close out and close out in prayer. All right. Dear Lord, I just want to thank you for all of the people in this room and all of the stories in our lives, all of the experiences that make us who we are. Good experiences, bad experiences, love and heartache, all build us into the people that you want us to be, Lord. So help us to be willing to share experiences that are important and be willing to go to people who might know more when we're struggling with something and trust those people that you've placed in our lives. Amen.